What's up, you sexy beast? So, yeah, I make this video with a somewhat heavy heart. So I'm just out of the interest of, you know, respecting this dude and, yeah, not wanting to draw any negative flack towards him. I'll say this much, he was one of the reasons I started my channel, because he is a very, very well-versed psychonaut. He's been tripping for years and years and years and years. He's, you know, older than me, a lot more experience, seems like a really fucking cool guy, I always gravitated to his stuff because he is very rational. And, you know, despite having crazy ass DMT and 5-MeO trips, like, he still is like a steadfast atheist, and it seemed like he was open to, you know, as I try to be, to, you know, the spiritual possibilities of experiences like DMT, like, always seem to, like me, kind of just attribute these things to the complexities of the psyche. Yeah, he released a video that I found slightly concerning, where he was talking about the notion of gang stalking. And gang stalking is basically a delusion that people have. These people refer to themselves as targeted individuals. I think it's one of the most dangerous delusions that are out there, because I can't really think of any other that gets so much support and has created this sort of feedback loop that encourages the delusions and usually dissuades them from trying to seek, you know, proper mental health treatment. I actually met a dude who had schizophrenia and thought he was being gang stalked, and like, he has a channel, you can check it out, it's called Real Gang Stalking, and if you watch the videos, you'll see that it's like pretty fucking insane stuff. It's pretty deranged. Like, he goes up to random people, like, I know what you're doing, I know what the fuck you're trying to pull, and it's kind of sad, really. Like, I was stuck in the psych ward with this guy for a month, basically, during COVID. So we were quarantined, we couldn't leave. There was like one hallway with our rooms that we shared with other people. My roommate was chronically masturbating or sleeping, and when he slept, he snored very loud, so I didn't sleep for fucking 8 days straight. Yeah, that was just a fucking awful experience. But like, this dude, like, he hyped up like the gang stalking thing so much, and it actually was like, oh, hey, maybe there is something going on here, because the way he described it, it's like this one car with like the left taillight out would always drive by him, and I thought he meant like the same car, and I was like, oh, maybe you do have someone stalking you. But then I saw his videos, and it was just like random cars that he would point to when he was like on an overpass or something. He would find like the one car going by that had one taillight out, and be like, ah, see, that's them, they're fucking with me. And the thing is in the comment sections of the videos, the vast majority of the comments are people being like, oh God, like, I know what you're going through, I'm so glad to hear that someone else is experiencing the same thing, and then they go on to tell their story, and so it provides the reassurance for the person experiencing it, but at the same time allows other people to divulge their issues, which is usually fine. But the problem is that if you're experiencing psychosis, you need treatment. Like, you know, since we were stuck in there and we had nothing to do, I found, you know, videos that explained from, you know, a pragmatic perspective how the whole notion of targeted individuals, gang stalking, and all this is essentially a self-fulfilling prophecy. People selectively look for things and they, you know, ascribe meaning to a situation where there really is none. And, you know, this goes back to how I describe psychosis. So how I describe psychosis just in general. And I've experienced it once from stimulant use, and it was fucking scary as fuck. But it's like, say your thoughts, your attempts to predict, you know, various outcomes, future outcomes of situations based on, you know, actions you can take in the moment or in moments soon to follow. You know, it's like making equations. But psychosis is like, you know, say the equation is, you know, 2 plus 2 plus 5. Well, it'll be missing the plus 5 part, so your brain will just fill it in with whatever. And so that creates this circuit that is essentially, you know, not based in reality, because it has the brain actually filling in pieces of the narrative for you. But it seems as real as anything else. Like when I had the stimulant-induced psychosis, like I couldn't tell what was real and what wasn't, and I saw people like in every parked car who were watching me with like binoculars and stuff, and I was like very paranoid, and so I kind of understand where they're coming from, but it seems like a lot of the people that this happens to, because, you know, just to humor the guy, so if you would watch some of my videos that I found, which explained from, you know, academic perspectives, like I think the Dr. Grande video was one, and then that chapter video was another. And I don't know how academic that chapter is as a individual, but I mean his videos are sure done in a very professional, methodical, well-researched way that I believe is fair and balanced. And there's that chapter video that made him like consider that maybe, yes, he was creating these self-fulfilling prophecies. I actually did get him, because his YouTube channel does quite well. It does a hell of a lot better than my channel. I actually got him to admit that, like, a large reason why he continues on with that narrative is because he likes the attention that it gets. He likes having people tell him that he's right. And like when they dragged him in, it was right after the election where Trump lost for what could have been his second term. And yeah, apparently this dude like threw an axe handle through the ceiling or something, and was like, "God damn it, Biden, you motherfucker, I'll fucking gouge your eyes out with this fucking axe handle," or something crazy like that. And yeah, so cops called. He was like nabbed and put in the psych ward, and they were like, "You know what, here, we'll give you like, you know, $1,500 a month, your own apartment. All you gotta do is just take this medication," which was haloperidol. And I was forced on to haloperidol as a teenager, and it was fucking terrible. But that was because I don't have the, you know, the neurochemical deficiency that Haldol's supposed to rectify. So I was shaking like crazy. That doesn't mean there aren't side effects for people who do need it, because it is like, it's a pretty heavy duty fucking medication. But it was interesting because like the first week he was taking it, I convinced him to take it. I said, just take it, you can always stop, you can always tell them, you know, it's not working or whatever. So just try it. And so he humored me, and as expected with, you know, medications like antipsychotics or antidepressants, for the first few days he was having psychosis that was worse than usual. And that was when he started to say some pretty like anti-Semitic fucking shit. Like he was starting to go off about the Jews, this, Jews that, global cabal, blah blah blah. You know, just like awful shit. But you know, his mind is not exactly playing with a full deck. You know, I'm not trying to be disparaging at all, but yeah. It's just, you know, hard to hear him drop like fucking like hardcore anti-Semitic and homophobic slurs. You know, I can only, you know, I only have so much patience with that, like regardless of what your mental state is. But like, it's interesting once the medication started working, like, because the thing was he had a little bit of a stutter. Like usually it'd be like, I'll give you an example, like when he was finishing a sentence, like he would stutter like that. But interestingly enough, once the haloperidol started working, he started stuttering less, and he became more rational and more honest, and that was when he admitted to me that he was like, you know, really getting gratification from the amount of people who were giving him attention because of this channel. Now, going back to, yeah, just the dude who, like, I'm just concerned about him is all. And as far as like, because, you know, to humor the dude who I met, I watched some of the channels he recommended. And it was, yeah, it's completely crazy fucking, you know, like obviously these people, they needed help. They needed help. They were just, you know, drawing very, very absurd conclusions from like really benign situations. And it's actually, you know, a lot of it's hard to watch because it's like, oh god, you're just confronting these like random people and, you know, like chewing them out and being like, I know what you're up to, I know fucking that you're part of a group. And the thing is like, one thing I've noticed with them is a lot of them can't point to who or what is coordinating this massive effort to conspire against them in such a way that like just about everyone is in on it. Everyone is just doing like just weird psyops to like fuck with them and make their lives miserable. And you know, I'm sure there are people who had that happen to them throughout history. Like during, you know, that espionage era of the Cold War and all that, I'm sure it happened quite a bit. I mean, I know the Stasi had like their own psyops, means of mentally breaking individuals down. There was I think his name was Paul Benowitz or something, and he was I think like an engineer and aeronautics researcher, and like he flew planes as a hobby, and so he started picking up these signals from Nellis Air Force Base, which were talking about a recent spy plane they were testing, and this was during the Cold War, and so they didn't want the information to get out, so you know, they recruited someone, this guy Richard Doty, I think his name was, from the Air Force. Now, the thing is, Doty is he's kind of made a career off of this and is a notorious liar, but factually this case seems to check out. So what this guy did was he was like, okay, you tapped into us talking about a UFO we have on the base. We have multiple UFOs all across America that have crashed, and he's like, I'll be like, you know, your deep throat. And you know, I know that sounds dirty, but that's actually a term they would use for whistleblowers. Like there's a character called Deep Throat in the X-Files, and he, you know, lets Mulder in on, you know, tips that he's not supposed to share, confidential stuff. And so, yeah, like essentially that's what Richard Doty said you'd do with Benowitz, and he was like, get your plane quick. There is a UFO crash at or on the Archuleta Mesa in Dulce, New Mexico, which those of you who know your conspiracy theories, that's supposed to be where that like massive underground nightmare facility is operating out of, where aliens like hybridize species and stuff like that. I think it's actually the inspiration for Half-Life, and it all seems to have stemmed out of this misinformation campaign. Because what Doty did is he got a bunch of ground troops to heat up just some scraps of metal, and used Benowitz's thermal camera to pick up the heat that was coming off of this metal. Like they just used blowtorches basically, and Doty signaled them when they were getting close. And so Benowitz is fully convinced that, like, you know, aliens were a thing, and that the government was either working with them, or like there was just like the biggest fucking thing in history ever happening, and he was a part of it. But they started fucking with him. Like they would go into his house when he wasn't there, and they'd rearrange the furniture in his house, as that's like apparently like a tried and true psyops tactic, and I could see why it would work, because, you know, with Maslow's hierarchy stating that, you know, your home, your sanctuary, is a big part of your mental stability. Well, when you come home and your furniture is all rearranged every fucking day, you know, that would kind of fuck with you. And like apparently they did it like, so it was like at first just rearranged, like, so it was barely noticeable, so he couldn't even, like, he didn't even acknowledge it at first. He just had a feeling that something was off every time he came home. And then they, of course, ratcheted it up until this guy had a full-on psychotic break, and was essentially committed to a mental institution for the rest of his life. And that's an example of, like, a real example with, you know, a lot of evidence to back it up with that sort of thing happening. But, you know, that is a very kind of like one-off case. Like it's pretty rare for something like that to happen. And that also was just like the Air Force just went, hey, Doty, we're appointing you to this guy, and he just had a small team and worked with them to essentially just make this guy completely unhinged. So anything that he may have leaked about what he heard regarding their spy crafts and bombers that they were testing on the base would just be discredited, because people would hear UFOs, aliens, and just go, this guy's a fucking crackpot. And they fully drove him insane. So yeah, I mean, I guess mission accomplished, but they ruined this guy's life in the process. But, you know, there's a difference between that and just like your average fucking schmo. You know, someone like me getting, you know, stalked and sort of fucked with on a mass level by, you know, essentially everyone and anyone. And like, credit where credit's due. The dude, the YouTuber I'm talking about, who, like, I'm worried about you, bro, fucking he made a better case than I've heard in any of the channels that I looked at where people claim to be suffering from this. Like he talked about how like neighborhood watch apps and stuff like that allow people to connect and correspond, and you know, so ergo could be a way of, you know, like bullying undesirable people. And since, you know, he seems to be living in his truck or something in a homeless community, you know, it makes sense that like, yeah, some snobby neighborhood watch group might fuck with them a little bit. But you know, then he starts talking about walking by like teenage girls and they just start laughing, and it was like they're laughing at him, and it's like that's when I start thinking, dude, like and he also said that you know, the people that he's living around claim to suffer from this. So, you know, when I talk about the whole echo chamber effect, where, you know, it only makes it worse because other people are affirming that same delusion, that's like he's experiencing that not on a parasocial level, you know, through YouTube or whatever, you know, just seeing another face on a screen somewhere else in the world talking about something slightly similar to what, you know, these people claim to be experiencing.
Wait.
Don't tell me to wait, damn it. Yeah, so it's like, you know, with anything, it's important to be in a forum where you hear and are willing to hear like a variety of opinions, as opposed to just the ones that reinforce what you want to be reinforced. You know, that's where the whole self-fulfilling prophecy aspect of it comes in. I just, I mean, it's also fascinating to me, though, because, you know, it's very clear that, you know, psychosis from bipolar, schizophrenia, stuff like that, are a result of mental illnesses. And as you know, mental illnesses aren't contagious. You know, when I was in quarantine around, in the hospital around people who are going in and out of mania, like, it would cause the other people around them who experience mania or psychosis to go into mania or psychosis, which made the place a fucking gong show. And I was like one of two people who wasn't in, you know, mania, because I don't experience that. You know, I just have bad depression. Yeah, it was rough. It was rough. There was just shit flying around the room, people taking shots at one another, people like there was this one kid who was like groping women and shit, and like I had to like have a serious talk with him, because I kept like knocking on the window to where the nurses were, which was, their station was separated from like the general population, and I could see why. It was complete anarchy, and just, you know, between the 20-something people. That I was there with, and like I told him that like this dude keeps groping this girl. I mean, he's like giving her the creeps. This kid had very rich Taiwanese parents who are also benefactors of the hospital, so I think that's why he got away with so much. But like, I knocked on their window as she was doing just that, and pointed right as he was like coughing a feel up on the chest, and I was like, see, this is what I'm fucking talking about. And they're like, okay, we'll talk to him. And they didn't do fucking anything. Just later on, they doped him up with a bunch of benzos till he was like zombified, but he was back to himself fucking a couple hours later. But yeah, anyways, yeah, like that whole experience just fucking, that was like a waking nightmare, man. But yeah, like the whole like targeted individual thing is fascinating to me, because like I said, you know, like if someone has bipolar or schizophrenia, you know, it's not a disease, it's not contagious, but you know, this particular set of symptoms that, these alleged targeted individuals, gang stalker, or victims of gang stalking report. It seems almost like it has a contagious effect on people. I don't know if it brings out like an underlying mental health issue, but like the dude who I'm concerned about is like he I think is like well into his 40s or something like that, and like he's known for having done a lot of acid in his life, and I certainly, when I was like forced into like mental institutions as a teenager, I met so many fucking people at various ages who like were completely fucking nuts because they did acid and they had like underlying bipolar or whatever. So like it would be surprising to me if he started experiencing delusions, but it could also be a result of drugs that just cause delusions and otherwise sane people, like methamphetamine and cocaine. As I said, it was cocaine that gave me stimulant psychosis. Meth was definitely the worst. I honestly, nothing makes me more uneasy than being around a guy who is like in excited delirium and smoking meth. And there are a lot of them in my city. I've had them try to stab me. I've had them attack me for no reason. I get very fucking uneasy around those guys, and that's why the time I was talking about when I was tripping on like 4-ACR DMT or something, and like taking pictures of the industrial area around my house, and that tweaker came up around the bridge and started just yelling something like kind of threatening shit, like I don't want to kill you, but what if I have to? And he's like doing this weird like heel click shuffle while moving super fast. It was a very bizarre thing to experience. When he said that and he came at me again, I fucking dropped him. I just clocked him. I saw he was out, and I just made sure he was still breathing and took off, because I was like, no thank you, sir. I'm certain I do not want to deal with like insane, drained, tweaker violence today. Thank you very much. And like the thing is, when I was like a hardcore fucking drug addict, I would do meth if it was around, and almost every time I did it, it got me like right on the brink of psychosis. So it'll make just any ordinary person act schizophrenic if they do enough of it, stay up long enough. I'm not saying this dude's doing it. He's been open about how he got an addiction to it in the past. I don't believe he's doing it now. His pupils didn't seem dilated in the video, but sounds like there's a lot of meth use going on around him. People we have a tendency to mirror behavior. As part of how our brain develops a sense of belonging, a sense of familiarity. We look for qualities that are in ourselves and others, and to feel like we're getting social acceptance, we will mirror qualities that other people want to see reflected back in themselves, to give themselves assurance about their sort of beliefs or whatever. So if he's around people who are multiple people who are convinced that this is happening to them, fucking gang stalking or whatever, maybe it's rubbing off on him. But it's so interesting to me though, because as I said, this guy has done a lot of fucking psychedelics, he was one of the few guys who's DMT trips, trip reports I'd listen to, because he does the same thing as me, where he avoids other people's reports because he finds they sway what the visual content is comprised of, which it does, at least for me. But since he doesn't do that, his reports are usually like very, very different from, you know, the kind of common themes you'll hear from, say, Terrence McKenna or Joe Rogan or whatever. And he always goes like, I think these are just, you know, the, like, projections of unconscious archetypes or personifications, projections, whatever you want to call it, which is kind of my opinion on it. So, like, he's always been super rational and level-headed. Like, you know, he even had this, he said it was 4-ACO-DMT in the title. I think he meant 5-MeO-DMT, because it sounds more like 5-MeO-DMT. Could be wrong, but it's one of the most fascinating tech reports I've ever listened to. Like, profoundly disturbing, too. Like, he said that, like, he merged with this Lovecraftian, like, abomination of a god that just, like, doesn't care for us, and that, like, created us just to feed off of our suffering. And it's like an indifferent, but like indifference that leans towards cruelty kind of god, and it's just like got its fucking prongs and all of us, or proboscis, or whatever you want to call it, and all of us just slurping out our suffering and just, you know, licking its lips and patting its belly, and, you know, but then it was like, yeah, but I was tripping, you know, so how real can that be, right? Like, you know, so it's just very, like, that's part of also, I guess, why I'm worried about the dude, because, you know, like, he just seems like such a good guy who has so much to offer the world, and it sounds like he's been through some shit too. Like, a couple times we talked about doing projects together for YouTube, but, like, I think just what was going on in his personal life, so, you know, nothing ever came through. But I still very much look up to the dude. But yeah, to just hear him, like, be unwaveringly rational about, you know, highly strange experiences, and then to have him all of a sudden talk about being the victim of gang stalking. And, you know, again, he makes an interesting case talking about these neighborhood apps and all that. And yeah, of course, if you're homeless, you know, you're gonna be like a more, I guess, at-risk demographic for being harassed. Like, I was homeless for years, sleeping on the streets and all that, and lots of people would fuck with me just because they could. Like, drunk people would just like, oh, fucking loser, and like fucking just kick the shit out of me. Like, I gotta wake up to people kicking the shit out of me, so I had to, like, I slept outside, I had just like a fucking can of bear spray in my hands, like, visibly. So, like, yeah, no, I get that, but then when he talks about, like, oh, like, you know, whenever I go by young people, they're, like, laughing, and it's like they're snickering at me, like, you know, it sounds like, you know, what I've heard from so many other people, this fucking paranoia, this conspiracy, and no one, like, truly knows why. Like, you know, who are you to warrant what must cost tens of millions of dollars and involve hundreds of conspirators to carry out? Like, it's just, you know, it's just something that doesn't make sense. You know, if you have half a brain. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, if you're like otherwise, you know, not impacted by psychosis and stuff like that, you're relatively, you know, sane by fucking societal standards or whatever, you know, you can see why it doesn't make sense, and it falls apart pretty quickly. I mean, you know, feel free to check out the dude's channel who I met. It's just called Real Gang Stalking, and you'll see what I mean. It's like, it's hard to watch. It's embarrassing because, like, you know, he's kind of objecting himself by, like, you know, say someone will come and ask him for a smoke, and then he'll fucking be like, hey, I recognize you, I've seen you here, I've seen you there, I've seen you at my gym, like, you know. And he would do this to like new nurses that would come into our wing. He'd be like, I've seen you before, like, have you followed me, like that kind of thing, like, you know, like really, you know, far out fucking stuff. But like, yeah, you'd be surprised. Look at the comments. They're almost all supportive, and they almost all are people who claim to be suffering from the same thing. And like some of the other channels I saw seem to be like middle class, upper middle class, like white people who like just experience this out of nowhere, and like it's just become an obsession for them. And I guess because of the stigma of like being part of a community and all that, you know, having a good job, you know, status, you know, money, a nice house, a good credit score, all that, you know, to end up in a psych ward or, you know, having to talk to a shrink, you know, people would probably feel shame in doing that. So, you know, I totally get why they would go to YouTube videos or, you know, Facebook pages and, you know, essentially find comfort in people telling them familiar stories, and saying, yeah, you're right, and not like telling them to like critically like scrutinize and, you know, be appropriately skeptical about such things. Yeah, no, it's kind of fucking sad, man. And like, it's just, yeah, it's interesting how it seems to have this like virile sort of effect where like the more people who are in vulnerable situations are exposed to that sort of thing, the more inclined they seem to be to believe it. And like going back to Benowitz and Dodie getting the Air Force Base to rearrange his furniture and all that shit, you know, like that is probably based on the psychology of Maslow's hierarchy, upsetting the fundamental things that we need to be stable, like, you know, a good diet, you know, a home, a roof over your head, you know, family, friends, social connections, so on and so forth, and that without these things, we, you know, there's no basis for mental stability. So, you know, if Buddy's living, you know, in his car or whatever, around a bunch of other homeless people who are doing the same thing, you know, he no longer has that, you know, that sanctuary, that fundamental sanctuary of, you know, a home. And so, you know, that's probably, I'm sure there's a variety of factors going on, but I mean, and also, who knows, maybe he is right. As I said, there are a lot of people who just like to fuck with homeless people. Like, I've seen it, and it's disgusting. There's a lot of concert venues that are around, like, you know, areas just where hard drug use is more prevalent than any other parts of the city. And so, like, these rich people will come down there, and like, someone will ask them for change, they'll be like, fuck off, get a fucking job, you know, and then just like, oh, you're so filthy, you're so fucking dirty, and look at your shitty clothes, and like, just like, it's because they can, like, they, you know, like, homeless people have no fucking, like, real authority or anything, so they can't do anything back. They can't be like, oh, yeah, dude, you're just like, yeah, here, man, just watch the flame. Yeah, almost. So got it? Oh, yeah. But yeah, I mean, it sounds though like the description he gave in that video sounded a little suspect, a little fanciful, like a little bit, how do I want to phrase this without sounding like pejorative, a little less grounded in reality than he tends to come across. And I'm certainly not judging the dude or anything. Mental health stuff like this is something you can't control. I know that all too well because I have treatment-resistant major depressive disorder. It doesn't give me delusions, but unless you consider pessimism a delusion, but some people who have it do get like full-on psychosis, but I don't. I've only had it once, as I said, from stimulant use, that was one of the scariest experiences of my entire life. I couldn't differentiate just the hallucinations from what was really happening. Anyways, I hope the guy all the best, and I gotta get going. I just wanted to make this video because I just don't want it to be a trap that people fall into, Alright, ciao.